Flooding and landslide situation in British Columbia. For today's briefing, we will have updates from Minister of Public Safety and Solicitor General Mike Farnworth, Minister of Transportation and Infrastructure Rob Fleming, Ted White from the River Forecast Centre, and Armel Castellan from Environment Canada. A reminder for media on the line, please press *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up. And with that, I'll turn it over to Minister Farnworth.
Good morning, everyone. I'm honored to be here on the traditional territory of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples. We're in the middle of one of the most intense series of storms that we have seen along coastal BC. This is historic weather intensified by climate change. The interior and southwest areas continue to see heavy rains with more on the way. The third in a trio of storms is expected to hit us storm pulse hit 2 weeks ago. More heavy volatile situation. Once again, it's time to be ready, to be prepared for heavy rains that could worsen existing flooding or create new flooding and increase risk to our highways. I urge British Columbians to pay close attention to weather forecasts and road closures. Focus on weather alerts for your area from Environment Canada and Climate Change Canada. Listen to your local governments and authorities, especially if evacuation alerts or evacuation orders come. You can also help prevent flooding by making sure eaves troughs, gutters, and the storm drains on your street are clear of leaves and debris. You can help by taking the time to prepare. This will make all the difference. And please avoid all non-essential travel in the days ahead. Drive carefully and never attempt to drive through floodwater. The depth of water pooling on roads is not always obvious and can be dangerous to drive through. We don't want any unnecessary closures or preventable accidents to happen on our roads that will further strain our already pressured resources. If you must be on the road, carry food, water, warm clothes, a blanket, and a well-stocked emergency kit. And pay close attention to Drive BC. These storms have impacted thousands of people, and the losses are heart-wrenching. Highway 8, in particular, between Merritt and Spence's Bridge, has seen catastrophic damage. Many people have now seen the videos and images of what is left of the highway, where large sections of it were swallowed by the Nicola River. I know that this has left First Nations and other communities who depend on this highway and other damaged roads anxious and uncertain about their future. While the circumstances are challenging and will remain so for some time, it's crucial that supports are there for those who need them. For First Nations that remain in their communities, some which have limited or no vehicle access, EMBC is ensuring food, medication, and other resources, coordinating additional supports and services from municipal and federal governments, as well as non-governmental organizations and industry. Delivered supplies to date range from food, water, and storage coolers, as well as sandbags, emergency kits, livestock feed, flooding preparedness materials, fuel generators, and radios. The province is also deploying the integrated support teams that include representatives from the First Nations Emergency Services Society and the First Nations Health Authority, as well as EMBC. Integrated support team visits include the Shaken Indian Band on Monday and the Coldwater Indian Band on Wednesday. These deployments will continue to other affected First Nations in the days ahead. The Fraser Valley has also experienced profound flood damage. On Friday, the Prime Minister and I toured Abbotsford and met with farmers impacted by the massive flooding over the past 2 weeks. Seeing is believing. And I want to thank the Prime Minister for making this visit to help ensure the federal government is fully aware of what British Columbia has faced so far. The province and the federal government have created a working group of federal and provincial ministers so we can work together to provide immediate and ongoing support to families, businesses, and communities affected by the extreme weather that we're seeing. This working group is being co-chaired by myself and Federal Minister of Public Safety, Bill Blair. And our governments will match donations to the flood relief with the Canadian Red Cross, tripling the value of each person's donation. It's thanks to the generosity of British Columbians and the hard work of thousands of people that people are getting the help that they need. Earlier this week, the province also announced that people and families evacuated because of flooding and landslides can now receive $2,000 to cover some of their emergency costs. Thanks to funds from the province and the generosity of Canadians to date, the Canadian Red Cross has distributed $2.25 million to people who were evacuated due to the flooding. I know earlier in the week, the Red Cross experienced high call volumes on their phone lines, but these have since been addressed. And the Red Cross has now stood up an online option to apply for this support. So if anyone has been experiencing issues with accessing these supports, I encourage you to call now or to sign up online. For any communities without online access or reliable cellular service, the Red Cross is working to provide in-person support. Lastly, given the potential impacts to southwestern BC from the current and upcoming storm, the province is prepared to use the Alert Ready program. Emergency Management BC has already reached out to emergency managers in First Nations and local governments in the areas that are forecast to be affected in the days ahead. Should a community or communities feel there is an imminent threat to life or public safety, the province stands ready to issue what we call a broadcast intrusive alert. Local governments are the experts on the ground, and emergency managers at the local and provincial levels will continue to closely coordinate through the days ahead. So in closing, while the second of the 3 large storms is now upon us, we need to continue to be vigilant, hope for the best, and prepare for the worst. To everyone living in southwest BC, please, now is the time to prepare for heavy rains and to do your part by avoiding non-essential travel and staying safe. I also want to take this opportunity to thank the First Nations and local government leaders, Ministry of Transportation crews, Emergency Management BC staff, the military, and so many, many volunteers and public safety partners who have been working around the clock to both recover from the previous storm and to prepare for what we may face in the coming days. With that, I'll now turn this update over to Minister Fleming. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Farnworth, and good morning. I'm grateful to be joining you from the territories of the Lekwungen-speaking peoples of the Songhees and Esquimalt First Nations. I want to bring you an update this morning from the Ministry of Transportation and Infrastructure. And yesterday, we proactively closed parts of Highway 1, 3, and 99 in advance of the current storm event. Our engineers had determined that these highways were vulnerable and at heightened risk because of ground saturation from the storm event 2 weeks ago. We've been monitoring the weather through the night. We are doing assessments on the roadways this morning. While there have been no major slides or washouts occurring on any of the highways, there have been smaller issues requiring attention, and I'll go through an update on each of these closures. On Highway 3 between Hope and Princeton, some trees and minor debris came down on the highway. Crews are working to clear those now while the rainfall is lighter. On Highway 1 between Popcom and Hope, there was a slide about 7 kilometers east of the spot where we closed the road at the junction of Highway 1 and Highway 9. Further along Highway 1 through the Fraser Canyon, there was some minor rockfall, and there is water on the road in the Boston Bar area. On Highway 99, between Pemberton and Lillooet, there was also a minor rockfall, and crews are working to remove that debris. On all of these highways, as I said, cleanup is underway. We have geotechnical engineers that are currently assessing when they can reopen, and when they can, that will be made public on our Drive BC website, and I encourage everyone to continue to follow that site. Otherwise, on other highways, we've seen some areas of localized flooding that may require additional closures. For example, the stretch of Highway 7 from 240th to 263rd near Maple Ridge has seen some flooding, and right now only commercial vehicles are still getting through this part of Highway 7, while passenger vehicles are being rerouted through local streets. And while we could see more localized flooding like this in the coming hours and days, again, I would urge everyone to consult Drive BC. It's your best source for the most current status updates on our highways and roads in the province. With more heavy rains in the forecast, we're going to continue to monitor roadways, particularly in the areas that have seen major impacts by recent storms. Safety continues to be our top priority, and if required, we will again preemptively close highways. If you need to be driving, I urge you to check Drive BC for the very latest updates on road conditions. And if you don't need to be driving, please do not take your vehicle out on the roads at this time. Let me briefly touch on supply chain update with respect to the continued movement of goods. CP is actively inspecting their tracks. Train movement is put on hold when it's required for maintenance, and then it will resume. Freight trains are traveling in both directions on CP tracks. And a reminder to motorists to look both ways at all crossings and proceed only when it is safe to do so. In closing, I want to echo the comments of Minister Farnworth by thanking everyone who has been and continues to be part of the effort to turn the tide on these massive flood events and their impacts on our communities. People have been putting in incredibly long hours, working into the night. This has allowed us to keep our highways open where possible. It's allowed us to reactivate supply chains and get goods into communities in BC that desperately need them. That will continue to be our focus. It is awe-inspiring to see the strength of British Columbians in this situation. They've showed their strength and resilience, and that's how we're going to get through these next storm events, by sticking together, by working together. And it's now my pleasure to introduce Ted White from the River Forecast Centre.
For our next update, we're going to Ted White at the River Forecast Center. Please go ahead.
Great, thank you. 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 The second series of atmospheric rivers has been impacting BC since Saturday afternoon. Rainfall amounts in the range of 35 to 60 millimeters have been observed around Metro Vancouver, Sea to Sky, and Fraser Valley, and upwards of 100 to 130 millimeters over local mountain terrain and on Vancouver Island. In addition, up to 30 millimeters of snowmelt has been observed and is adding to the runoff from the rivers. Heavy rainfall is expected to continue through Sunday morning and ease by afternoon, and later in the afternoon or evening for the eastern Fraser Valley, Fraser Canyon, and into the interior. Rivers are rising rapidly throughout southwest BC, with dynamic conditions expected throughout Sunday. Flooding is possible, and flood watches are in effect for the south half of Vancouver Island, Sunshine Coast, Howe Sound, Sea to Sky, Lower Mainland, Fraser Valley, and into the interior watershed on the Coldwater, Nicola, Tulameen, and Similkameen rivers. A flood warning has also been issued for the Coquihalla River. Flood risks will continue throughout the day on Sunday, with improved conditions expected on smaller rivers by Sunday evening and Monday for larger rivers. The U.S. National Weather Service has issued a flood warning for the Nooksack River, with a forecast for moderate flooding and risk of overflow later on Sunday into the Sumas River. A brief period of drier weather is expected on Monday. However, the next potentially potent atmospheric river is developing in the Pacific Ocean. This is expected to make landfall in British Columbia late Monday and is forecast to have the potential of being an extreme storm. Current weather modeling is aiming this atmospheric river onto the Central Coast, with additional heavy rainfall expected on the South Coast. This system will bring significant flood risk to coastal areas, Central Coast, South Coast, and Vancouver Island, on Tuesday and Wednesday. Continued wet weather is forecast next week, with additional storm cycles forecast for Friday to Saturday, and again late weekend or early the following week. Thank you.
Our next update is from Armel Castellan with Environment Canada. Please go ahead.
Hello and good morning. Good morning. My name is Armel. My name is Armel Castellan. I'm a warning preparedness meteorologist with Environment and Climate Change Canada. As has been said by Minister Farnworth and the other speakers, including Ted White, we are dealing with certainly the second half or the end of the second storm of these past few days. 20 to 30 more millimeters are possible on top of the over 100 millimeters that Hope has seen. More moderate amounts, 10 to 15 millimeters in the Sea to Sky and more western parts of the Fraser Valley. These will eventually ease. They will take longer as you get deeper into the coastal mountains. The Fraser Canyon, the Coquihalla Summit, for instance, will last overnight and could see 10 to possibly 20 millimeters more. certainly the cumulative impacts of successive storms is of concern. We will be continuing to assess the dangers associated to this third storm. Again, it has high uncertainty to it. It is fairly certain, however, that it will reach the central coast first and give the highest amounts for areas on the central coast and then start to slump south. Still a fairly wide range of solutions are possible, from a continued event like we saw on Thursday and into Friday, that 40 to 80 millimeters with perhaps 100 millimeters in higher terrain. But another solution, another scenario is also very possible, where that stalling of the atmospheric river happens further south onto the south coast. With that scenario, higher numbers, higher rain intensities are certainly possible. So we, as well as the other agencies present here, urge maximum caution and vigilance as we go forward into the next few days, and we hope that the impacts remain as low as possible, but to be ready for a third and very strong storm as well for early next week. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all our speakers today. As a reminder for media on the line, please press *1 to ask a question. That's *1 to enter the queue. You will be limited to one question and one follow-up. Our first question today is coming from the Press Theatre. Keith Baldry, Global News. Please go ahead.
Hi, for either minister, any update on the Trans Mountain Pipeline? It had been hoped to reopen on Friday. Just wondering if you've got any indication at all from the company of what to expect.
Yeah, thanks for that question. Yeah, thanks for that question. We've been in close contact with TMX. As you know, they've deployed more than 200 people to ensure the safety of the pipeline, and they can get it back up and running. It's my expectation we will have a more comprehensive update tomorrow. What I can tell you, though, is that the public have been doing the right thing in terms of the 30-liter limit. The overwhelming majority reports that we're hearing are people are just getting the 30 liters. I can also tell you that there are additional supplies that have been being barged up in terms of fuel to meet the needs of the province, as well as additional fuel arriving by rail.
Follow-up.
And Keith, did you have a follow-up?
Originally, rationing was set for 10 days. Expectation now that's originally rationing was set for 10 days. Significantly longer than that. And also, Minister Fleming, any update on the CN rail situation? Any update on the CN rail situation?
In terms of the order in place on the 30-liter restriction, we have said right from the beginning that we're going to do whatever is required to ensure that the fuel supplies for British Columbia and the affected areas are there to meet the needs of not only first responders and our emergency services, but also to ensure the movement of food trucks and transport trucks. That's still very much underway, and we have every confidence that the fuel is there for that. But in terms of the situation around the pipeline, we'll have a further update tomorrow.
And
Thank you. Yeah, just to a CN Rail update, we'll let the company provide that. What they were reporting as late as Friday afternoon was significant work before this storm event began, and in between the previous storm event on repairing track and rebuilding connectivity for the rail line. So I would expect that the weather has impacted the ability to mobilize crews, perhaps, but CN was reporting to the public most recently that they're very close to being operational again. So we'll again provide that update as we have it.
And our next question is from Janella Hamilton from CBC. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you so much. Tourism operators in BC's interior are calling for Highway 3 to be open for non-essential travel leading up to Christmas. Is this something you could or would consider?
Question for Minister Fleming.
Yep, thank you. So Highway 3 has been incredibly important right now to reattach communities from the Lower Mainland to the interior to get goods moving again. Prior to the closure on Saturday, which was preemptive based on safety assessments, we had a total of 4,000 plus commercial vehicles move through the corridor. So the priority for the time being will continue to be commercial vehicles. We'll update the public on when the highway will reopen. It's currently under inspection. We did, as I said, have some minor slide and localized flooding events, primarily near the Princeton area. So the preemptive closure was the right thing to do because it would have had to have been closed anyway at some point during the storm event on Saturday. And when we reopen that highway based on a geotechnical and safety assessment, the restrictions will remain in place. So it will be commercial vehicles and essential travel only, which is there are still some people who have not been able to get back to their primary address in the southern interior, or vice versa from the southern interior to the lower mainland. But those are the only categories of travel right now on Highway 3. The restrictions, we want them to be temporary, but they will be based on assessment of what is in the greatest, what are the greatest needs right now of British Columbians, and that continues to be an important corridor for commercial travel.
And Janella, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, please. Thank you. And speaking of the flooding that is starting or is happening in Maple Ridge, are there any homes or areas of Maple Ridge that you are concerned with flooding, evacuations possibly needed at some point?
At this point, it is just localized flooding. At this point, it is just localized flooding that's on the that 240th to 264th area. We are not, we've not been made aware of any issues around alerts or evacuation orders at this point.
Please go ahead.
Hi there. I'm interested in hearing why you are using the alert ready system now and how confident you are that it'll be effective.
So we've been working with local governments, and we have been prioritizing, as we did the other night with Abbotsford, in terms of in the case of an imminent threat, to be able to use the alert ready system. And as I said at that time, we rely very much on the expertise of the people, the professionals on the ground who are dealing with a particular situation and understand exactly what is happening. And so if there was, as we saw in Abbotsford, the potential for an alert advising about of an imminent threat, then we would be using it.
Yeah, just for the general public who may not be used to using it, what message do they have? Where can they look for it? That kind of thing. Do they have where can they look for it? That kind of thing.
Well, in terms of information about the weather conditions and what's happening on our roads, Drive BC, Environment Canada, Prepare BC. In terms of your local community, your local government, in terms of evacuation alerts and orders are on their websites. And so if there was a broadcast intrusive alert that was put in place, it would be based on that discussion of an imminent threat, and as I said, advised by what's happening on the ground, that would be for a specific area, such as the potential one that we saw the other night was on the Sumas Prairie.
CBC, please go ahead.
Thank you very much. Just for the forecasting for the rivers and the flooding forecast, we're hearing from some sort of concerns about previous estimations on levels and dike building and such are off because of the amount of sediment and what is being found and has been washed into the rivers. How much is that complicating your forecasting right now?
Yeah. We'll go to the River Forecast Center. Thank you.
Center.
Thank you. Yeah, we're trying to get more information on that to look at how the streams, how the stream channels may have changed to help us understand how it affects the forecast. It's early days yet. We're still gathering information.
And Susanna, did you have a follow-up?
Have you heard from any places in particular that have seen, and we've heard from one location suggesting they're feeling like they may need to add 2 or 3 feet to dikes that they're building right now based on what they're seeing. Are you getting any sort of initial ideas from certain locations on changes that you're seeing in terms of those levels and adjustments that are having to be made?
Thank you. I haven't heard directly on that. We're still working through the EMBC to gather information on that.
Thank you, everyone. This concludes today's information update. Please note our next schedule update is for Monday, November 29th. Thank you again.
All right, we're hearing there from government officials on the latest flooding update. So Mike Farnworth stressing, our safety minister stressing, we are in an extremely volatile situation with more heavy rain on the way. And once again, urging people to be ready to leave at a moment's notice. The safety minister also specifically mentioning Abbotsford and the Sumas area as well. You are being asked to avoid non-essential travel as much as possible.